4 position sizing formulas behind winning in trading. Now, most traders spend all their time obsessing over entries and exits, but position sizing is what actually determines whether you make money or if you blow up. These are the exact same methods I use across my own automated trading portfolio, and here are also the results, specifically in crypto over the past couple of months. As we can see, I've been outperforming BTC and MARK by a significant margin. We're actually up around 13 to 15%. Depending on volatility, while most of crypto is down around 30 to even 40%. And it's all really because I sized my positions correctly. Now, these principles also help me run algos in the futures markets that are fully automated using NinjaTrader and a bit of code. Now, of course, I'm not the only one saying this, and I'm not the original founder to realize position sizing is a huge part of trading. Let's actually listen to a hedge fund manager and how he says position sizing is the core of trading.
To me, this is like the two most important things, especially between tournament poker and trading. Are patience and bet sizing, right? And if you've got pocket aces, you don't want to have your life savings at risk as a 4-to-1 favor because 1 out of 5 times you're bankrupt. And the same thing goes in trading. But I promise you can always go to a more obscene level. And so you want to make sure that that you're not in a position where if it moves against you more than you think, that you are stopped out, blowing up, whatever you want to call it, where you're done.
And he's completely right. You can have the best strategy in the world, but if you size your positions wrong, you will lose money. And if you size them right, even an average strategy can compound for years. So in this video, I'm going to break down the 4 position sizing methods that actually matter, when to use each one, and the one rule that matters more than any formula. So let's get straight into it. Now, method 1, let's start with the foundation, and this is fixed percentage position sizing. This is where most traders start, and the idea is very simple. You risk a fixed percentage of your account on every single trade. So for example, if you had an $80,000 account, you'd risk 2%, for example, and that'd be 1,600. The math is dead simple, and the position sizing basically just equals your account value times your risk percentage. That's it. Now, why does this work so well? It's because it does 2 things at once. When you're winning, your position sizing grows, so you compound faster. And when you're losing, your position sizing shrinks, so you can protect your original capital, making it self-correcting. Now, the downside is that it treats every trade the same. It doesn't care if you're trading Bitcoin, which moves 5% a day, or some boring bond ETF that barely moves. And it doesn't account for how confident you are in that trade as well. Everything gets the same percentage, whether that be 1, 2%, etc. Now, at least for myself, I normally use about 1 to 2% of account as a baseline. Now, this is normally for strategies where I don't have a more advanced method, or maybe they don't need a more advanced method. Overall, method 1, it's very simple, it's effective, and most importantly, it keeps you alive if you stick to it. Now, method 2, this one is called equal weighting. This one shifts from thinking about individual trades and to thinking about your portfolio as a whole. So instead of sizing each trade separately, you divide your capital equally among all your positions. Now, this can either be based on positions or it can be based on strategies. But in this case, let's say you have 10 positions. If each one gets 10% of your capital, and if you have 5 positions, each get 20% of your capital. This is also another way of people looking at it. If you were creating a portfolio, you could sometimes weight it by market cap. But in this case, when we're particularly talking about position sizing, normally we're going to be dividing capital across them. Just to give you a very easy example, if you have $100,000, you divide that across 10 positions, $10,000 per each asset or per strategy if you had 10 strategies. Now, this works really well when you're running a diversified portfolio of uncorrelated strategies, and it makes it very easy. You don't have to overthink it. You can just run clean exposure across everything. The big advantage here is that it forces diversification. You can't accidentally concentrate all your capital into one position. It's also very transparent and easy to explain. And it does reduce correlation risk a bit because you're equally divided between everything. So you're not having, one position that just has 80 grand, for example, of your 100K. But the downside is the same problems as really the fixed percentage. It completely ignores volatility. So a 100% volatility asset is going to get the same allocation as a 20% volatility asset. So even though your dollar amounts are equal, your actual risk exposure is completely unbalanced. And this is a problem we're going to try and solve with method 4. And also you'll realize I said one word, and this is very important for equal weighting, is uncorrelated. If you have correlated strategies or correlated assets, for example, equal weighting method isn't really going to be ideal most of the time. The reason being is that if they're, let's say, fully correlated, right? So 1, that means if you have 10 grand in one position and you have 10 grand in another position, technically you kind of have double exposure because you'd have like 20 grand in that position because it's fully correlated, meaning if one goes up, the other one goes up. If the other one goes down, the other one goes down, which means you're basically losing double the amount. But if they are uncorrelated or at least low correlation, then equal weighting can be a pretty good method. Now, method number 3 is the Kelly criterion. This one sounds amazing on paper and a lot of people like to reference it, but it's actually quite dangerous in practice. To give you some backstory, Kelly was developed in the 1950s at Bell Labs. It was originally designed to optimize signal-to-noise ratios in telecommunication. Then gamblers discovered it and started using it for poker, blackjack. It has also made its way into trading. Now, the formula primarily calculates the theoretical optimal position size to maximize your long-term capital growth. It takes your win rate, your average win, your average loss, and it tells you exactly what percentage of your capital should be at risk. Now, if you want to see the actual math, this is a very popular Kelly criteria formula. Primarily, all it really does is it equals your win rate times your win-loss ratio plus 1 minus 1 and all divided by the win-loss ratio. So let's say you have a 60% win rate, your average win is $300 and your average loss is $150. That gives you a win-loss ratio of 2. You plug that into the Kelly criterion and it tells you that you're probably going to risk around 40% of your capital on one particular trade. And that's the exact problem with Kelly. It's mathematically optimal if you have perfect information. Nobody does really in trading. So the first reason why this method often fails in trading is it's extremely sensitive to input errors. If you think a win rate, for example, is 60%, maybe you've done a really good backtest, it's a 5-year backtest, and it's told you that it's actually 60%. But actually, maybe there was some missing data or you didn't, backtest it correctly, and your win rate is actually 55%. Kelly just told you to over leverage by almost like 50%. This small estimation errors translates into massive sizing mistakes. And then this leads into the second issue. It assumes your edge is constant. Your win rate, for example, in 2023 is not going to be the same as 2024. Markets change, regimes change, and your edges often decay. And then lastly, even with a real edge, Kelly can produce 50% plus drawdowns. Most traders can't physically handle that. 3 bad trades in a row and at 40% risk, you're basically done. That isn't going to be a recipe for long-term growth. Now, if you do get lucky, if you have a very high win rate strategy, for example, you could compound your account beyond any extreme that most traditional sizing methods would be even possible to do so. But you are taking this risk. Ultimately, you are just kind of trading high leverage in some aspects because you're just sizing every position so high. But I do know some traders that have grown, very decent sizable account from this method and then have switched to a very conservative sizing method like, 1%, 2%. Now, this also leads to what some people use Kelly for. They call it fractional Kelly. Typically, this is a quarter to a half of what the formula actually recommends. But the irony kind of comes out that if you're using quarter Kelly, you're just going to end up at around 5 to 10% risk for a trade. And at that point, you could basically just use a more aggressive version of the fixed percentage sizing. You don't really need to be using Kelly in that case. Now, the theoretical appeal is very strong for Kelly, but the practical implementation in trading is kind of a nightmare because we don't have perfect information. Whereas in blackjack and, for example, even a bit in poker, you kind of have closer to perfect information, whereas in trading, you really never get close to it. Now, the only scenario where it might make sense to run, and I have heard and read papers that have done it, is a very high frequency strategy with thousands of trades per year or even per month. And because of the volume of the amount of trades, their statistical probabilities are very robust, where it means they could maybe use the Kelly formula for this. I haven't seen that many people do it, but I've definitely read a couple of papers where they said they mentioned it. However, I would say for most traders, unless you are obviously a very risk-on trader, I would probably ignore the Kelly criterion, but it could be a method to at least be aware of. Now, method number 4, and it's primarily the method I use in most of my strategies, this method kind of ties everything together that we've been talking about, and it's called volatility targeting. Instead of sizing based on dollars or fixed percentage, you size based on how much risk each position actually contributes to your portfolio. So high volatility assets get small positions, lower volatility assets get larger positions. The goal is that every position contributes roughly equal risk. So let me give you an example and also show you why this matters. Let's say you have $10,000 in Bitcoin, which has around 80% annualized volatility, and $10,000 in Apple, which is around 30% volatility. These numbers are both made up. Apple, I think, is a lot lower than 30%, but let's say it is for this. Now, your dollar amounts are equal. You have 10,000 each position, but your risk is completely unequal. Bitcoin is going to be probably contributing around 3 times more the risk to your portfolio than Apple is going to be. That's not balanced in any way. And also, maybe you didn't intend to want to have Bitcoin, contributing 3 times more the risk. So this becomes slowly a hidden concentration problem. Volatility targeting is a way to fix this. There are a few ways to implement it, so I'll guide you through each one. The simplest is using ATR. This just stands for the average true range. It's a very common indicator, and you can pretty much load it up on TradingView or really any market or really any platform. ATR measures how much an asset typically moves per day. So you take the risk per trade and divide it by ATR to get your position size. So in volatile markets, ATR goes up and your position automatically gets smaller. In calm markets, ATR goes down and your position naturally gets larger. It's a very easy self-adjusting method to use. Another approach is percent volatility model. This is where you take your account value times a risk percentage and divide it by that asset's annual volatility. So if you have a $100,000 account, for example, and you have 2% risk, and that asset has 40% volatility, your position size is around $5,000. If that volatility then doubles to 80% annualized volatility, then you could automatically reduce your position to around 2,500. And then lastly, there's also fixed percentage with volatility adjustment. This is where you start with a base allocation, for example, like 10% of the capital, that scales inversely to volatility. If you have high volatility assets, let's say at 60%, that might get around $5,000, while a low volatility asset at maybe 15 gets $20,000. The low volatility asset gets around 4 times the capital because it contributes less risk per dollar, meaning you can size bigger in that particular position. And this is also a great case where you want to set a target volatility for your portfolio. So a lot of the times, especially in our crypto models, I'll normally want to have X percentage volatility that I'm targeting, as that is something I'm capable and happy to kind of like take on for that portfolio. Now, to actually calculate volatility, the standard approach, there are a couple of different ways, but the most standard is just to take the daily returns of the past 20 trading days, calculate the standard deviation, and annualize it by multiplying it by the square root of 252 for equities and futures, or by 365 for crypto, just because crypto is always trading. Now, this is the most sophisticated method on the list, but it's essential when you're trading multiple asset classes and when you want to run a diversified portfolio, especially if it's going to be an automated portfolio, whether that be in futures, crypto, etc. Also, it's a really key thing to keep in mind. Volatility is constantly changing in all these markets. So you do want to have a way where your position sizing, checks for that. For example, we've had the crazy oil volatility come in because of the war in Iran. And that's also why this terrible setup. I had to get away from Dubai for at least a couple of weeks. And I'm just currently in an Airbnb with my laptop. All of that actual volatility, obviously in my life and also in the markets, causes where you want to reduce your position sizes automatically. And that's something where I'm very lucky because I have automated trading. That automatically is just updated for me. Now, one last rule that you cannot break with this is that it doesn't matter what formula you're using or formula I've shown you. If losing a trade makes you afraid to take the next trading signal, you've sized way too big. If you want to do revenge trading because of one particular loss, you sized way too big. If it makes you question your entire system and your entire strategy, you sized way too big. The perfect position size is one that lets you execute the strategy without emotional interference. Now, obviously that can be helped with automation, but ideally you never want to be sized so big that it's going to change the way you trade. And often that's why actually trading smaller is what the math suggests, and it's also better for you emotionally. Now, apologies for the slightly scuffed video, but I hope this was still helpful.